So it needs to be firm enough to take this power float, and the power float will be run over the surface of the floor, passing these blades over it. Now these blades can be, the angles can be altered. So the first pass of this will be with the blade sitting flat. So you've got a larger surface area sitting on the slab, which means it will take its weight much better. And as the floor firms up and gets tighter and harder, then those blades will be angled up, giving them a steeper angle, so that really compresses the surface in. Now this isn't a cheap process, and it's obviously not cheap because these guys have all had to come in on a Sunday morning to do it, but that's the point. That's when it needs to happen. We need to make sure you're doing it the right job at the right time, otherwise you'll end up with an expensive mess. But at the end of the day, what you've got is a floor finish. So if you're putting your floor finish on at the same process you're casting your slab, actually that works out to being not such an expensive floor covering. So we shall run a power float over it to do that bit of levelling, bit of compressing, and then a big blue floor trowel to take out any of the marks and pull just a little bit more fat up. Okay, so is what that power float has done is it's literally sort of planed the surface. So taken the slight higher spots off and leveled the whole thing to a consistent finish. So as we keep saying, it's very important to make sure you're doing the right process at the right time. Exactly the same as plastering. If you over-plaster it, over-trowel it, you'll tend to pull too much fat off, and then you're sucking moisture from the background, which means you can actually start removing the plaster from the background. So knowing at what stage you do what is really crucial. It's exactly the same with the floor. So this process here with the power float is skimmed over the top, it's planed off those high spots, and you've got the shadowing here of the areas that have been power floated. And these bits here, which are still slightly shiny where it hasn't hit. So Vinny's now just going around troweling the edges, and then the big blue floor float will be used just to give a final finish to that. We shall then have to wait and see how quickly it pulls in, which could be 2 days, it could be 4 days. So these processes have to be done at the right time, and those will be influenced by the conditions that it's in, by the sun, the wind, those things which, and obviously the temperature at the time. So you can see this troweling in of the edges is being done without any additional water. The water is all what's retained in the slab, and that's being pulled up by the trowel, and as it's being troweled across the surface, it's tightening the whole thing down. Okay, it's now 4 days since we laid this slab. So we laid it on Friday, it's now Tuesday. We've laid this, this end of the floor was laid just a little bit wetter, and we experienced a bit more cracking on this end. That end obviously was the slightly drier end, and actually it's gone down and it's pulled in, and we're not getting any cracking on there. So it does highlight the fact that moisture content is really important. That consistency of mix, consistency of ingredients of aggregate, lime, water, all contribute to the way in which these things pull in. So we're going to power float this again today. But it's interesting, you can see, you draw your hand across it, still a lot of moisture, but I think the majority of this is probably condensation, because the floor is still slightly damp. It's also cold, and this whole barn is cold and has been cold throughout this whole procedure. So the slab is cold, and I think there's just moisture condensing on the surface here, which will all help with power floating and drawing that fat and tightening the finish of the floor.